Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I put out a couple of videos, but I plan to start going full throttle for the year 2025. So I hope y'all are ready because I got a lot of information to unfold on y'all. So be prepared. So anyways, in today's tutorial, I'm gonna take it a couple of steps back. I'm gonna reorganize myself. And we're gonna go over the basics of Tinkercad. Now I know a lot of people want to learn how to use 3D software, and it's not as straightforward as it appears to be. Or, that's it from at least from what I've heard from other people. And so we're gonna go over some of the layout today so that way y'all can just get a better understanding of what you're even looking at. Okay. So basically right here, what you see right here, this blue field right here is what you call your work plane. Now the work plane is basically the area in which you're gonna be doing your 3D modeling on. So this work plane is always gonna be your print area, basically. So right now as a default, when you go click on your settings, you're gonna see that the units are in millimeters and that the width and the length is 300 by 300 basically. So that lets you know like the space you're working with. If you want to make it more seamless with your workflow as far as when you're exporting into like say your software to prepare your files, then this is where you would come in and maybe change it. So say I had a 400 by 400 3D printer, right? I do that. I close the settings. Boom. Now look at my work plane. Now it's 400 by 400, and it just can work smoother once it comes to exporting. That way you don't have no discrepancies. Because if you had too small of a work plane and then you export it, you might have, some objects sitting outside and you can't even see them on your software, and you're probably wondering where the hell are they. So it's just something to keep in mind, and that's what the work plane is. Typically, the work plane, you see how they have every cube, every line, every section should be a millimeter, if I'm not mistaken. That's the unit that they're working with. So I'm going to verify that right here. No, so to correct that, the larger lines is a total of 10 millimeters, but the smaller lines is basically the dimensions of the grid. So each one of those is one, and each line that's 10, that's 20, that's 30, that's 40. So that gives you an idea of how to set your dimensions for your objects relative to the workspace. That way you have an idea of what you're doing. But you can also always just click right here on the corners of your shapes and you'll typically get dimensions. So like right here you'll see 21 and then you'll see 32. 32 is gonna be your length. 22 is gonna be the width over here. And the good thing about this is you're able to just kind of manipulate it like that. If you click on the top one, you're gonna get the height for the Z height. And so that lets you control that. All of this is done in millimeters. And so another thing to know is going to be this snap grid down here. If you notice, as I move this up upward, you're going to see that it moves in increments of 1 millimeter. And that's because this snap grid is set like that. So you see how I do it by the twos. Now it's moving by 2 millimeters. SnapGrid's good when you're trying to draw something precise and you want more control over the dimensions, if that makes sense. Rather than, if I had it off and I just moved it, look at how the dimensions act, they're just real free. I have no control over it unless I type in there. But when you have your SnapGrid, I mean, it just makes things a lot more simpler for you. And so that's what that does. And so that's what the workspace is. To get familiar with the workspace too, I'll let you know. Depending on if you have a laptop or regular desktop. Either way, you have the mouse pad, right? So like for me, I have a mouse. It's a lot more useful when it comes to 3D, even though I got a laptop. It's just easier to, maneuver around the workflow. And so, just to give you a little rundown of the controls. So, anytime you click the left click, it's going to highlight things like this. That's what that does. It'll select, you can drag. When you hit the right click, it's going to allow you to rotate your camera. This is what starts allowing you to see your objects from a different angle. And it's always important to have on you. Let's see. Okay, so here's another one also. So if you right click and you hold shift, what you do is pan over. That's what we call pan. You're panning over. So instead of rotating, it kind of lets you just move it over like that. And then, of course, when you move the mouse wheel up and down, that's always to zoom in or that's to zoom out. And that's always lovely to have on one hand. So that's a little bit about the mouse controls in relative to the workspace. I've mentioned a little bit about the work plane as well. Let's go back to the settings right here. Settings right here, you can have your background color. If I just want to turn the background black, we can have it black. It'll change right now in a moment. As soon as I do that, you'll see that. It's up to you. Show grid. The grid is what you're seeing on the work plane. I would recommend keeping that on just for reference. And then I guess they added a new feature for zoom speed. I guess, you know, for like sensitivity of the mouse and things like that. Another important thing, just depending on which unit of measure you're working with, whether that's millimeters or inches, you're gonna have that set right here in the workspace settings. So it's by default, I believe it's already millimeters, so that's how I have it set. But if you go over here, you can also switch it to inches. Now you notice the work plane dimensions are now 15.75 by 15.75, and that's because that's in inches. So now we close that. Now we're going to notice when I click down here on the dimensions, 1.89 and 2.126. Those are going to be dimensions now that are in inches instead of like the metric system. And so that's just depending on what workflow you're in. I always work in millimeters just because that's just like the standard when it comes to design and things like that. Very few times will I come across something that's where I'm working in inches a lot, unless it's a very large object that makes sense to have that relative to it. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna basically go back to my default, close the settings. Now we're back to the millimeter. Okay, so that's a little bit about what I've showed you on the work plane. So that's pretty cool. Up top right here, you're going to see this cube. When you click it anywhere and you drag it, you're able to control the angle of the camera all day. And so it has each side labeled. So I'm going to show you a little something. Every time you click on it, that's front, it'll give you a straight view of the front. Now if you click this little arrow on the side, it's going to rotate it. Click this little arrow right here, it's going to send it to the back. Click on the corner, it's going to give you that corner ISO view. Click on the corner, it's going to give you that ISO view. Top view. So that way, instead of, using your mouse, if you want more of you want a more accurate angle to view it from, then you just click that and then you just, move that around. Right here, you're going to see your home button that basically just takes you back to the center of the screen. I think this is right. This next button is just to fit all the objects in the view. And that's basically to zoom in and out, but I already mentioned how to do that with the mouse. So you don't need to use that part. Up top right here, you're going to have your paste option. You're going to have your copy options. So if I copy this and then I click over here and I want to paste it, well, there's the next one. That's what that basically is. Over here on this right side, you're going to see this triangle thing. This is what they call an alignment. So if I have, let's just say I have two squares. They're not aligned with each other. You click one, you hold shift, you click the other one. A line was actually this one. Which one was? Oh, that was for mirror. I'm sorry. When you click a line right here, it gives you an option. You can line it over here at the top. You can center them both, or you can line it down at the bottom, or you can center them both. But for now, I'm just gonna click this one. So as you see, when I click the dot in the middle, it's what kind of centered them and aligned them together, basically. And so that's a feature that is useful for when you're wanting to create maybe like patterns and things like that, or if you just want, things to be clean. Let's see. Another feature I want to show y'all real quick, or not even a feature. Let's kind of go over the layout a little bit more still. Um, Over here, you're gonna have your import. This is where you import your STL files or your OBJ files. If you got files you want to download from somewhere else, you're always welcome to import them in here. And as long as they're not over 25 megabytes and they don't have a million triangles, you should be okay with importing them. It does just so you know, the Tinkercad does not like objects with high memory and things like that. So just keep that in mind as well when you're uploading things. So that way you're not wondering why it's taking so long. Over here, you're going to have your export. This is for when you're done making your creations. You're going to click that and then you would want to hit export and then STL. If I'm not mistaken, if everything else is still on the work plane and you just click this and export it, it's still going to take everything with it. So what you need to do is, oh, that was a group. That's not what I wanted to do. What you want to do is click this little light bulb. It's going to hide them. Now I just got this one by myself. Now when I export it to STL, now I should only see that one. So now if I import what I just exported, there's the same square. So that's how that works. Another option here is to send to Autodesk Fusion if you got that integrated. If you want to send your work over to that software to kind of keep working off of that, you're able to do that. You can send files to your Google Drive, kind of have some cloud storage. And then they got a lot of other options here. And several of these are basically to send over the designs that you have to get them 3D printed, do some kind of service. That's typically what I believe those are. So other than that, there's this up here, which is a notes tool. Don't ever really use this. If you like to leave notes somewhere along the workplace, you can. More than welcome to, but it's never been something I've used before. Something that's really important is going to be right here, this work plane tool. Now, as you know, the default work plane is right here at the bottom. Let's just say I wanted, I don't know, add a little design to the top of this square. And, I don't want to have to figure out how to move it upward along the axis to where it's sitting there perfectly. I don't want to take too much of that time trying to figure that out. So best bet is to hit this and assign the new work plane. You click the old object and you hit the letter D on your keyboard. Once you do that, it levels it with the work plane. Move that over and now look at that. Now for these two, I'm going to hold them together and I'm going to hit this group button. Now look what happens. Now we just got one object. Remember I hit a couple of things earlier up here. This is the light bulb to show everything. Once you click that, guess what? Now those things are back. So it's just a little bit about how that works. So remember that work plane tool. It's good for assigning areas where you'd like to begin drafting or drawing from. Over here, you're gonna have like your basic shapes. They got a lot of your, primitive shapes. They got a few. They got the text if you want to get custom with it. That's there. Um, Other than that, they also have several other features in their library. I would recommend checking them out and just exploring them. There's a lot of just random things, just depending on what your case is for your design. They also have the Sim Lab, I believe, which is something new. I think that's interesting, and I think shape generators is also a good feature. This one right here, I used to use this a lot in the past, just because they're designed with a little bit more customization on them. So, like you see right here, you got the height, you can adjust that, outer radius. So these shape generators in specific have some unique features to manipulate to give you some good designs. And so that about wraps everything up. I gave a good thorough, review on it. I think that was pretty good for the most part. If y'all have any questions, just put them in the comments. Let me know. I plan to start putting out some more videos. I know I've been slacking on that for a while, and believe me, there's a lot of juicy information that I really want to put out there because, I get a lot of people, constantly seeking me for like, answers on things on behalf of 3D printing, technology, design, 3D modeling, and things like that, where I'm an expert in, I believe. And so, with that being said, keep um, just look out for the next video. Comment below, and let's see where I go from here on the next one. Thank y'all for tuning in. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.